Welcome to the Bywords Show. I'm your host, Hannah Hughes. Bywords is all about equipping women for purposeful living by starting conversations, celebrating stories, and inspiring faith. In a world that applauds the hustle, I'm here to help you break free from the lies and come back to what really matters. It's time to get real, get rooted in truth, and come alive in relationship with Jesus so you can show up to each day with intention and confidence no matter where you're at in your story. Here we believe that embracing our stories brings hope, healing, and purpose to the process, and sharing our stories helps others do the same. Whether you're looking for a midweek faith refresh, practical tools for pursuing your dreams, or just need some good old-fashioned girl talk, you're in the right place. Grab your latte and let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Byword Show. Today is the day. I'm so glad you're here. You guys, we are going to have such a good chat today with Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer. I am so excited to get to talk to you and just hear about what you do. She's the physician founder of Well Empowered. So, first of all, Dr. H, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and your community.
I'm so glad to have you here. I can't wait to hear more about your story and these things that you teach. But first of all, I have to ask you our little warm up question, which is what has been filling your cup lately, both literally, but also figuratively?
Oh my goodness. Literally, what has been filling my cup is either Earl Grey tea, which I love in the
Ooh.
morning, or real ginger juice tea, which I love in the afternoon. So I'll take, I have to admit, I actually get 100% pure ginger already like in a bottle. I don't do it myself, but I boil my hot water. I put a good maybe like half a cup of that ginger in a cup, and then I top it off with the hot water, and it is spicy deliciousness.
Oh my
So
goodness.
those are the literal things in my cup. And then figuratively speaking, well, I work remotely from Switzerland. And
Wow.
so the mountains and the beauty that really fills my cup, figuratively speaking.
Oh my goodness. I cannot imagine. Switzerland is on my bucket list. We just moved from Texas to Colorado. And so being around the mountains, I'm like, I can't believe people see this every day. Like, do you ever get sick of it?
Never, never. Like truly, it never gets normal. I like my husband and I, we walk around and even with our own eyes when we see things, we're like, this can't be real.
That's exactly how we feel. It still feels like a
Yes.
vacation. It is so beautiful. Oh my goodness. I love that. And those teas sound so good also. Like, especially during the cold weather, I love like a spicy chai or a ginger. Oh my goodness. That sounds so good.
Yes.
I love that. Okay. Well, Dr. H, I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you. I'd love to know, just as we're getting started, like what is your personal story that got you originally invested and passionate in this world of wellness?
Yeah, well, for me, and I think like for a lot of people who really get passionate about what they do in this world, it was my own journey,
Mm,
right? So for me, there was a time in my life where I struggled firstly with my weight and then with my digestion and then a little bit with, being responsible for sleep and kind of like some adrenal fatigue that went with that. Only
mm,
at the time I didn't know I didn't really understand the source of these different seemingly disconnected conundrums.
yeah.
And to start with the world of weight for me, I grew up dancing. And so I began riding what I like to call the weight loss roller coaster at a very young age. And, somewhere along my mid 20s, I just kind of threw up my hands and I said, this isn't working,
Mm,
right? How I'm relating to my body and to food and to myself in this struggle that feels self-perpetuating, this all or nothing struggle really isn't working. And so for me, I drew a line in the sand and did a few things. First of all, I really vowed to author a new path forward that was born of love.
mm,
I also made a request to the divine to partner with me and guide me in my journey, and made a promise that with that, I would guide others in their journey.
mm.
So ultimately, as I began to marry science and heart in my own journey, I got really clear that I needed to get very well educated in the science, because what works for me in my body, whether it's around weight or digestion or energy, is not going to work for someone else, right? So
Mm.
I went back to graduate school. I got a couple of graduate degrees. And then, long story short, began practicing functional medicine, or what I also like to call data driven natural medicine, in 2013. And I just love this work. It really is. I see this health journey as a sacred journey. And it is such a privilege to join people and guide people and partner with people in their journey.
I love that, and I have to point out, I love that you talked about it changing. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it just stuck out to me so much that you paved a new path with love, especially on your weight journey. Because, I mean, we're about to get into a bunch of conversations about New Year's resolutions and how many women feel like, "Okay, this is a time I'm finally gonna stick to my goals to be healthier, lose weight, or figure out, like, whatever these root causes are." I mean, I feel like a lot of the time it is weight and body image related for women. But, I mean, I think it's no surprise to us at this point. A lot of the time when we start the new year off with these really extreme goals, we end up either falling off track and then feeling like a failure and getting in these shame cycles, or just getting so extreme and it's not sustainable. So, well, first of all, I'd love to know your thoughts on, like, why do you think it is so hard for us to get to a point where we can just pave a new path with love? Like, why is it so extreme for us as women? Like, and then we just can't even stick to these goals.
Yeah, and I love you were so, like, speaking the path of so many people, the struggle of so many people, Hannah. And the reason I think there are a few different reasons, but one of the top reasons I see is that people were born into a paradigm, and they're just living in that paradigm, and they don't even
Mm,
know they're living in that paradigm. In other words, a lot of the things that aren't working and don't serve people, and especially women in this area of their lives, are inherited, right? The approach of an all or nothing take on how we care for our bodies, which is what I would call overindulgence or deprivation, right?
mm,
Dancing back and forth. That overindulgence deprivation, right? We're stepping into the holiday season as you and I talk right now, where it's considered um, almost encouraged to overindulge. And I do mean overindulgence different from indulgence. Those are two very different things in my book. So, um, overindulgence and then followed by deprivation and then followed by overindulgence, right? And the thing is both with overindulgence and deprivation, they're born of self-aggression, right?
mm,
And, nobody needs to trust me on that. Like, in other words, don't take my word. Just look at your own experience and look at for yourself, if you have overindulged, did you feel proud or ashamed of yourself?
mm,
Did you feel love and compassion? Or did you feel aggression? What showed up for you after the fact? Did you feel regret? So these are just
mhm,
different things you could look at. And the same thing with deprivation, right? The deprivation at a certain point, right, really just ends up feeling like beating ourselves up. And so this approach was really inherited. And so to me, it's kind of like people didn't know they're swimming in water and they don't know they're swimming in water. And
mm,
so once they can start to see it, they can begin to get curious about, if not this, then what? That what piece is what I like to call authoring your middle ground,
mm,
authoring that not too tight, not too loose way of moving about the world and caring for yourself, such that you are nurturing all of who you are, right? If for you having, some dessert at Thanksgiving or Christmas is a form of nourishment and social connection, fine. It's not the one dessert that's the problem, right? And
yep,
so it's kind of getting really curious about how do I live this in my life, and really being patient with yourself as you craft that journey, right? And when I
mm.
work with people, I actually provide people, I call them fulfillment exercises, but we could call it homework. And they're designed to help people in gathering different insights as they step into this new journey grounded in self-love.
That is so good. I'd love it if you could maybe speak to the difference between
Well, let me preface this by saying, in my own experience, because I come from an eating disorder background, very legalistic around food and body image, things like that. So for me, as I've grown on my healing journey, it's had to come with this shift between like, I'm working out, I'm eating, I'm doing these things as a form of punishment or because I messed up and I have to, balance the scales again versus I'm doing this because I love my body and I want to care for myself. Like we're made in the image of God. Our bodies are our vessels that we only get one of in this lifetime. So what is the difference there that you maybe people could say like, well, how do I know if I'm operating in one or the other? Because like you said, sometimes we don't even realize we're swimming in the
Yeah,
water until we're reaping
totally.
the consequences of it. And then how do we start making that shift out of there?
Yeah. Well, I love what you're sharing here because it's, it's totally, I know people far and wide are relating to it. And one of the other missings that we haven't yet touched on is in the way, like what makes it so difficult for people to find a new path. What keeps
Mm,
people stuck in that old way is is people have not yet given words to their why around their health, their what in their why around their health, right? Okay, maybe they think that their what is for the scale to say a certain number or to be able to wear a certain size of clothes, but really, I promise people that's not your what,
mm,
right? There's something else there. And so I call this process of uncovering what's there, authoring your vision of vitality for your health and your life. And commonly when I guide people in this exercise, what they're really speaking to is how they intend to experience themselves and their body, or maybe how they intend to care for
mm,
themselves and their body. And then also, what does that make available?
hmm,
Right? What does that make available for you in your life? And so when people do author their vision of vitality for their health and their life, it begins a new journey in that it becomes the North Star, right? People start looking at how do I live aligned with that? Right? So it becomes almost more like a carrot dangling experience rather than the
mm,
stick on the back, right? Bad me, bad me, bad me. So that is one thing that I found to be really, really useful on this journey. Now, the other thing that I would say about how do people know, right, is when people are clear on their intention, they'll get pretty clear about what aligns and doesn't. And
mm,
sometimes they'll learn by making mistakes, just like anything else, right? If anyone out there has gotten really good at anything, which means all of you listeners, because I know you're all good at probably many, many things, whether it's really good at school or really good at a sport or really good at connecting and caring for people. You know, we get good at things by learning. And how do we learn? Well, sometimes we learn by making mistakes, right? But that's really, bringing ourselves grace through this experience. And when we make a mistake, when we see I've overindulged or I've engaged in deprivation, whatever the case may be, if we can pause and reflect on how did that come to pass?
mm,
Like what set me up? Was it something emotional? Was it something logistical? When I think about overindulgence, a lot of the people who I work with, they kind of have this like it's like a day-to-day habit of overindulgence and deprivation, right? They don't eat, they don't eat, they don't eat, and then suddenly it's 5 o'clock and they're famished. And so, any sane person is going to consume and maybe consume things they don't intend to when they're that hungry, right? So even just looking at it from that perspective and looking at, okay, how can I set myself up such that I arrive when it's time to eat feeling good and feeling sane and feeling like I can make a choice that really works for me and my body and my taste buds and my intention, all of who I
mm,
am.
mhm,
So, it really is, I would say another thing about the inherited paradigm is this myth that it takes a month. There, oh my goodness, Hannah, right? It does not take a
Yeah.
month. It doesn't even take a year. It takes longer, right? But that's okay. You're going to be here anyway, God willing. So, 1 year I think of as one lap, right? So 1 year, you're going to encounter all of the emotions. You're going to encounter the environments, right? The people who you encounter, as well as like the actual environments. Maybe you're on vacation, or maybe you're visiting a friend, or you're at a restaurant, or it's just a typical Wednesday and you're at work, whatever the case may be. All of these environments invite us to start to look at how do I live aligned with my vision of vitality in this situation, with these
Mm.
emotions, with these people.
Yeah, that's so good. Could you speak to finally shifting that paradigm and then also like the timing of it? Because I think obviously we're in such a fast result microwave outcome kind of culture right now, and we see all these people selling Ozempic and these diet culture quick workouts or ways to heal XYZ, right? So how can we switch our mentality from getting a quick fix, fast results, like I'm in it for a 30-day challenge kind of thing, to this is a lifestyle change that will take time, and kind of building up that resilience so that we don't give up if it does take a year, more than a year, like whether it's a weight thing, whether it's healing something in your body. I know you mentioned digestion. I mean, these are things that just take time, and it's hard sometimes when we don't see the results right away.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So practicing, a few different things. One, I see putting on blinders, right? Getting clear on your intention, and crowding out the noise, right? You're a human being. You will, if you have a habit of being uh, kind of like a moth to a flame about these quick fixes, that knee-jerk kind of reaction will still be there. But finding a way to pause and just notice it for what it is and go back to your journey, right? That in and of itself takes practice. And so there are a million different ways to strengthen that habit. I really am such a firm believer in creating time at both ends of our day, but especially at the beginning of the day,
Mm,
to slow down and get connected to our intention and ask for guidance and help, right? In whatever way you see fit from God, really, invite collaboration,
mm,
and, and then find your way to come back to that throughout the day. As you said, Hannah, right? We live in a very fast paced life right now. And one of the things that I will say is so wonderful about this, time where my husband and I have been here in Switzerland, is seeing that it's not like that everywhere.
mm.
Like the shops here actually close for an hour and a half to 2 hours for lunch. I
Wow.
mean, they don't relate to lunch as a nuisance, right? They
Mm,
actually relate to it as a lovely thing that everyone has a right to enjoy, right?
yeah.
Can you imagine in an American city,
No.
shops. The first time I saw that, I was like, "No, this can't be right. It's just no." It's lovely. To me, it makes a lot of sense as opposed to, in the US.
That's crazy to think about. It is crazy. It's
Right.
crazy to think about how we are so inundated with what is normal to us that we can't even fathom a different way of doing things, where it's like, most of the world isn't operating this way. But because of our social media culture and the fast pace of our society, we expect things to come so quickly that when they don't, we think, "Oh no, what's wrong? Maybe I need to push harder." And so much of the time, that is not the case. And I mean, I've just found in my own journey, it's so much of the process between where I'm at and getting the result I want is not even just the habits I'm creating, but relearning the whole pace of it.
So perfectly said. So perfectly said.
Mm,
Honestly, Hannah,
and that's hard to
great
do,
wisdom. It is. It
because
really
I'm
is.
an impatient person.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I hear you 100%, but it is so well said, right? One of my dearest mentors in life, his mantra was slow down. That's it.
Yep.
Slow down, you know?
Honestly, yes, it's so crazy how as we get older, we think that productivity is the answer. And then we don't really notice that things have started to get out of line or get out of alignment until we start to have those symptoms, like whether it's gut issues, fatigue, these other things that start popping up. So I would love to know from your experience and from the things that you teach now through Well Empowered. Obviously, wellness is not one size fits all, but across the board, are there things that you would recommend, like sustainable habits or practices for women that we could maybe just take with us, maybe one step at a time, or as we start to retrain ourselves through the process of this longevity version of wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. And so as to not overwhelm, I will just offer a few things, but I also really invite your listeners to remember you're all unique, right? You're all at a different place in your journey. Some of you may be very well versed in nutrition and fitness and things like that, and for some of you, you've been focused elsewhere, and so wherever you are is totally perfect. So my encouragement is, as I speak to different things you could take on, is for you to listen for what would make a difference for me and what might I be willing to take on,
Mm,
right? Um, and so, the first thing that I would say is, the whole world of eating for blood sugar stability is such a powerful foundation for our energy levels, for our mood, for our hormones, for our satiety, for our focus. And for some of you, you hear that blood sugar stability and you got it. You already know what I'm talking about, right? And for others, may not be quite sure what that is. So wherever you are is great, but a place to begin this, if this is a new thing for you, would be to cultivate a habit of your first meal of the day having at least 20 grams of protein, at least 10 grams of fat, and in the carbohydrate world, just making sure it's nutrient dense, meaning it
mm,
either has lots of antioxidants like you'd find in fruits, or it's got a lot of fiber, which you'd find in a whole grain of sorts, right? So you've
mm,
got 20 grams of protein, at least 10 grams of fat. And then carbohydrate world, we're looking for really just things that are nourishing your body. And so starting from that foundation really has spiral up benefits throughout the day. Now, I myself am not someone who practices intermittent fasting, and I honor people who feel like that really does work for them. I actually think for a lot of people, it's an eating disorder rebranded. Um,
mm,
but I also understand for others it's not. So my invitation with that is if you are doing intermittent fasting, I just want you to look to notice, does it feel like punishment or not? And if it doesn't
mm,
and it's working for you, great. I still encourage your first meal a day to really be blood sugar stabilizing, right? So that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say is making sure you are prioritizing sleep, right? In this day and age, we can be engaged in almost anything we want at any time of the day, right? And
yeah.
so, looking at how you're helping yourself slow down and actually preserve a minimum of 7 hours of restfulness, because that's going to have benefits not just on energy, but on our mental health and well being, our hormones, our skin, our immune system, our weight, our lab markers. If we're going real, farther down the line, we're thinking about cognitive health, right? There's just really nothing that sleep isn't useful for.
Mm,
And then, thirdly, finding ways to slow down and be connected to yourself, be connected to God, really just finding your way of experiencing sacred moments.
mm,
And I really encourage that in the bookends of the day, again, as I mentioned earlier, starting with the beginning of your day. And that could be as simple as 3 to 5 minutes set aside to breathe deeply and be with yourself and envision your intention for your health in your life, right? And by that, I mean, when I work with people and authoring their vision of vitality, one of the exercises I invite people to do is time traveling to the 5-year future and telling the story like pen and paper of what it is to be them thriving in 5 years.
Mm.
And so, for you listeners, I encourage you to do that exercise, like actually tell the story, first person present tense, 5 years, what it's to be you thriving in life. And then also come back to that on a daily basis. And
Mm.
then at the end of the day, it can be really helpful to count your wins. I love the bookend of counting your wins at the end of the day, like actually practicing acknowledging yourself for ways you have honored your health and your life as sacred. Whether that was I had 2 pieces of pizza instead of 3, or I had the salad instead of the french fries with my burger, or I actually have the salad instead of the burger, right? There's so many different ways you can win the game you're playing. There's no one right way, but really getting into the habit of acknowledging yourself for moving towards fulfilling your intention.
Mm. That is so good. And you know what? You said a word in there that I consistently have to come back to, and that is simple, because we
Mm.
overcomplicate this so easily. And again, my personality is very much to go to the extreme, but I often find myself in these seasons, especially at the beginning of the year, where I feel like I need to do an overhaul of my entire life and habits and routine. And it doesn't have to be that extreme or complicated. I mean, I think there are so many simple things that we overlook, thinking like, oh, they're not as productive, so they're not going to be as effective, like slowing down, prioritizing rest, prioritizing gratitude and mindset and these things. But really, those are so critical to the longevity. Like, being able to stay in the process, I feel like those are the glue. So, if you're listening and you're like me, like just know it does not have to be an extremely complicated plan to be effective.
100%, 100%. And, I would also say, for listeners who are saying, I know that, I know that, I know that. w- Are you doing that? Is the question I would pose, right? Because
Mm.
knowing and doing are two different things. Only actions produce outcomes, right? Knowing you quote unquote should, which of course, next thing is shame, right?
Mm.
Should be slowing down, but not slowing down doesn't make a difference. Slowing down makes a difference, right? So tools only work if you use them. Really stepping into what would be one next action I could take, as opposed to, right? Hannah and I just talked about 3 possible places you could focus. My encouragement is to just pick one and start there and just strengthen that muscle. If you decide, yeah, I need to find that pause at the beginning of my day, great, practice that for 6 weeks and then take on something new,
Yes.
but keep that going.
Yes, that's so good. I'd love to hear your thoughts about, or like what you would say if there's a woman listening and she's like, I get it, but like this is just, I've never been able to succeed with this. Like I've tried everything and
Yeah,
this is just how it's always going to be. I'm just always going to have a sweet tooth, or I'm always going to have the extra weight, or I'm always going to have these gut issues, these health issues. I just can't see past it. What would you say to her?
I would say a few things. One is, you are not a chair. And what I mean by that is a chair will always be a chair. A chair is never going to be anything but a chair, but you're a human being. You have the capacity to evolve over time.
Mm.
So I would never encourage someone to lie to themselves, right? To say instead, oh, instead of my digestion's always going to be a challenge, oh, my digestion's easy. Like, no, your brain knows that's not true, right? But keeping the door open in how we speak does matter, right? And so an example, let's say we're talking about weight, might be right now, this is really a challenge for me, or it's been a challenge for me for a long time. Okay, got it. Got that that is true, but let's keep the door open for a future that's different.
Mm.
And that by itself won't change things. You will need to get curious. You will need to find new resources, you know, whether it's me, and of course it would be my pleasure to join you in your journey. But whether it's me or someone else, just really trusting that if this is an area of your life that you are devoted to transforming, it is transformable. It is shiftable. And it will probably take a little bit of surrendering. I know it did for me. I do know there was a time for me where it just felt like, oh my God, this is always going to be a challenge. This is always going to be a struggle. And then one day I surrendered. And I will say,
Mm.
I couldn't have surrendered a day earlier. I wanted to. I don't know. It was just kind of like at one point I had an aha moment that
Mm.
this struggle was interfering with my capacity to be fully connected to others. It was interfering with my capacity to be present to the amazing people and love in my life. It was interfering with my capacity to fully contribute. And when I got all that, I was like, that is just not okay. Not like bad me. It's just not okay. And so I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah, that's good. And I think honestly it does take getting to that point, and not just like forcing ourselves to change, but being okay with being right where we're at in the process. Like we can't start anywhere else than exactly where we are. So
Yeah.
just being willing to start, and I love what you said, being willing to surrender also, because how many of us women like want to have control, and so much of like wellness tends to be this control, this power struggle for us, rather than a thing that we do out of love for ourselves and honoring our bodies.
Mm.
So I think you just speak so gracefully to this process, because it is something that we can't just force ourselves into. Like there has to be an element of love and grace for it to be something that's actually sustainable and lasts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to me, it really is it can be one of the most transformative in the
Mhm.
most beautiful ways journeys you'll ever traverse, right? Because learning how to not just in words, but with how you be with yourself, bring kindness and love and compassion. I think about The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy lands and it goes from black and white to like Technicolor, right? It's like
Yes.
it can be like that when you start to step into a whole new way of being with yourself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it is so possible. Oh, wow. I love this. Well, I'd love to know before we go, is there anything else you want to leave with the women who are listening as we gear up for the new year, and so much emphasis on, like being really intentional about our wellness and our health journeys?
Yeah. So one more thing I would invite you all to take on is to be engaged in a question with yourself. And the question is, what is my best game right now? What is my best game right now? And bringing that question with you throughout your days and throughout the holiday season, right? And so that means for some of you, it may be my best game is having 2 glasses of wine instead of 4, right? For some of you, it might be my best game is having 1 dessert instead of 3, right? You get to say what your best game is. In the way of movement, right? Sometimes in this busyness of holiday season, it can go by the wayside, right? So, okay, you intended to get a 45-minute workout in, but now you only have 15 minutes. Great. Use the 15 minutes, right? Best game is 15 minutes. We'll take 15 minutes over none any day of the week. And, really just being in that looking of what is my best game right now.
I love that. I think that's so good. Well, I'm so grateful for you. I love that you have done the work in your own journey and authoring a new path out of love. And now you are helping so many other women do the same thing. So will you please let everyone know where they can connect with you, work with you, and stay in the loop from here?
Absolutely. So you can find me at wellempowered.com. And really, I mean this sincerely. If you heard something in this conversation that was useful for you, please schedule a complimentary consultation. Whether you have intention of exploring working together or you just would like to connect, it would really be my pleasure to connect with you. You can also sign up for our weekly dares. So wellempowered.com/dare. If you go there, you can sign up and you'll receive an email every Sunday to take on a micro habit for 1 week and
I love
see,
that.
just notice, right, what difference it makes. And then you can find me on Instagram at wellempowered.
Okay, I love that. Well, I'm so excited to stay connected with you. I hope you all who are listening have just felt encouraged and inspired and just like a weight lifted when it comes to this conversation that can sometimes feel so heavy and overwhelming. But seriously, Dr. H, thank you so much for your time and the work you do. I'm so grateful that we had you here today.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's been such a pleasure to be with you and your community.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to another episode of The Byword Show. I love having you here, and your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoyed this episode, would you leave a quick review? It really helps our community grow and reach more women. If you want more, you can shop my books, Waking Up, Living Open, and Love Is on Amazon, and be sure to sign up for my email list so you always get the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come hang out with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.